I never thought my quiet mornings would start with the sound of destruction. Not an alarm, not a bark, but a crunch, a hard, final crack that ripped me out of bed like a soldier under fire. For a moment I couldn't place it. My eyes were still closed, but my body was already moving. That's when Sam stirred beside me, her face lit by the cold glow of her phone screen. "Cole, what was that?" she whispered, her voice tight. I yanked the blinds open and froze. There it was, a silver Mustang, its front end buried deep in what used to be my cedar fence. Steam hissed from the mangled hood. Splintered boards littered the yard like broken bones. The quiet suburb shattered. I muttered the words without meaning to. "We've got a new lawn ornament." Sam sat up straighter, alarm in her voice now. "Cole, what happened?" I didn't answer, not yet, because just then the driver's door creaked open. Out stumbled a figure, lanky, unsteady, and far too familiar. My jaw clenched, of course. Brad Dawson, the teenage nightmare of our neat little community. The son of the one woman who could turn even a potluck into a power struggle, our HOA president herself, Karen Dawson. Brad staggered, glanced at the wreck, then at my house. Confused but upright, and then unbelievably he pulled out his phone. I didn't need to guess who he was calling. "Sam," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Call 911, single vehicle crash, property damage, disoriented driver, facts only." She was already on it. That's why we worked. She handled digital, I handled analog. I slipped on my boots, pushed open the door, and stepped outside. The air was cool, carrying the stench of burnt rubber mixed with something sweet and chemical. Brad leaned against the trunk, phone pressed to his ear, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Hey man," he mumbled when he saw me. "Crazy, right? Your fence, it just," he waved vaguely, jumped out. I crossed my arms and stared at him. Then at the skid marks carved into the asphalt, black arcs that told the whole story. He'd taken the corner too fast, lost control, and my fence had paid the price. The silence made him squirm. He shifted his weight, opened his mouth again, but before he could invent another excuse, the real storm arrived. "Karen Dawson." She stormed down the street in a silk robe, a budget supervillain in slippers, her eyes already locked on me. She didn't even look at the wreck. She went straight for me, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Maddox, what did you do?" I almost laughed. "Morning, Karen, your boy just test drove my fence." Her face twisted. "That fence is too close to the road, a trap, my Bradley could have been killed." I gestured to Brad, perfectly upright and only slightly wobbly. "He's fine, my fence is." Sam's voice floated from the window. "Already handled, door cams rolling." Karen's mask slipped for a moment, panic, then fury. She stepped closer, planting herself between me and the car like she could block reality. "You will replace every board by sundown," she hissed, "or I'll fine you daily." "Absolutely," I said calmly. "Right after your son brings my fence back in one piece." Sam called from the window again, cheerful as a TV host. "Smile for the cloud, Karen. You're on 3 cameras, ours, Mike's, and the street cam." "Morning," Mike called from his hedge, coffee in hand. Karen spun, snapping. "You can't film me without consent." "It's a public street," I said. "Your robe, that's private." Her face burned crimson, but before she could unleash her next tirade, blue and red lights flashed. A cruiser rolled in, siren silent, just watching. The officer stepped out, eyes scanning wreckage, skid marks, me, and finally Karen. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice flat. Karen pounced like a predator. "Thank goodness. Officer, this man, Cole Maddox, has an illegal trap fence. It attacked my son's car. I demand you cite him and make him pay for all damages, plus my son's emotional distress." The officer blinked once, slowly, deliberately. He'd heard it all before. He turned to me. "Your property, sir." "That's right. Woke us up about 10 minutes ago." Then he shifted to Brad. "Name." Brad's voice was barely audible. "Brad Dawson." The cop stepped closer. "Son, have you been drinking tonight?" Brad's denial came too fast, too rehearsed. The officer leaned in, nostrils flaring, then he straightened. "Over to my cruiser, field test, now." Karen tried to shove a water bottle into Brad's hand. "Hydrate, sweetie." The officer's palm shot up. "Ma'am, do not interfere." Brad staggered through the test, failing spectacularly. The second officer circled the Mustang, flashlight probing. The beam froze on something metallic in the passenger seat. A small blue canister, nitrous oxide, and scattered chargers. "Found nitrous," the officer announced, his voice loud enough for everyone. Brad's face drained white. Karen's mouth fell open. My heart hammered in my chest, because in that moment I realized this was bigger than a wrecked fence. Much bigger. And Karen Dawson, she had just lost control of the story. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was almost too quiet for how loud the moment truly was. Brad Dawson, the golden boy of Karen's perfect little empire, was suddenly just another kid in cuffs. The officer read him his rights while Karen's face twisted in disbelief, her silk robe glowing red under the tow truck's lights. "This is harassment," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "My son is the victim here. You should be arresting him." She pointed a shaking finger at me, her fury sharp enough to cut glass. The officer's tone dropped like a hammer. "Ma'am, step back, let me do my job." For the first time since I'd known her, Karen Dawson didn't have a comeback. She froze, her lips trembling as the narrative she had tried to spin collapsed around her. The second officer called out, holding something else from the car. "Burner phone, cheap, shut down, bagging it for evidence." My stomach flipped. A burner, that wasn't joyriding behavior, that was something darker, organized, hidden. Brad's head hung low as the tow truck groaned, hauling his mangled Mustang off my lawn. Its blinking yellow lights painted the street in a surreal haze. The perfect morning Karen had always promised this neighborhood was gone. All that was left was smoke, splinters, and the sound of her son's life unraveling. I stood there, the cool air biting, Sam slipping a warm cup of coffee into my hand like she always knew what I needed before I did. For a second, I let myself believe it was over. The fence would be replaced, the insurance would handle the bills, and Brad's problems would stay in his family where they belonged. But Sam's eyes were locked on the dark screen of our door cam footage, replaying the crash frame by frame. "Cole," she whispered, "this wasn't random, he wasn't just speeding, he was racing. Look at the angle, look at the way he came into that curve. Too sharp, too fast, that wasn't just a mistake." Her voice sent a chill through me. Racing, here, on our streets, where our neighbors walked dogs and pushed strollers. And that burner phone in the evidence bag, it suddenly made sense. A dedicated line, a ghost network for kids who thought their suburban playground was a racetrack. Sam leaned against me, her jaw tight. He wasn't alone. There were others. If they're racing here, this isn't the last time. I stared at the shattered fence line. For years, Karen had waved HOA violations in our faces, grass too long, trash bins out an hour too late. But this wasn't about grass or bins. This was about life and death. And Karen, she'd fight to bury the truth to protect her image. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering. I could almost hear their thoughts. Karen's son, cuffed, towed, drugs in the car. Karen saw it too. The eyes on her, the cracks spreading in her kingdom of control. She pulled her robe tighter, her voice trembling with forced authority. "This isn't over, Maddox. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." I sipped my coffee and didn't flinch. You already tried, Karen, and the truth still showed up. Her glare burned into me until the cruiser doors slammed and carried her son away. Then she was gone, storming back down the street like a general retreating from a lost battle. Sam exhaled slowly beside me. She's not going to let this go. I nodded. No, she's going to come after us harder. She'll use the HOA, fines, violations, anything she can throw at us. The morning sun was rising now, casting light on the broken boards scattered across my yard. A wrecked fence, yes, but also a warning. This wasn't about wood or nails. This was about a woman who would sacrifice the safety of an entire community to protect her son. And for the first time, I felt it deep in my gut. This wasn't the end. This was the opening shot. The real war with Karen Dawson had only just begun. By the next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing like a hive struck with a stick. I couldn't walk to my mailbox without feeling the eyes, the whispers trailing behind me. Brad Dawson, nitrous, burners, cuffs, and my fence splintered like matchsticks. Mike, my neighbor with the perfectly trimmed hedge, leaned over as I picked a chunk of Mustang grill out of the dirt. "Heard the commotion," he said, his voice too casual to hide his excitement. "Karen," saying your fence, well that it jumped out at Brad, just leapt. I didn't even blink. "Aggressive fence," I said. "It's a new breed, territorial, very dangerous." Mike blinked, then chuckled. "Guess you learn something new every day." He went back to his clippers, but I could see the smirk he was hiding. Karen's version of the story was already making rounds, and I knew what was coming, not just gossip, paper, official, fluorescent HOA paper. I didn't have to wait long. A week later, she didn't just mail the violation notice. She marched to my mailbox, staples in hand, slamming it like she was branding cattle. "Final warning," she barked, pinning neon paper across federal property like a sheriff in some cheap western. "Daily fines until your eyesore is corrected." Sam leaned against the porch rail, arms folded, watching. "Tampering with a mailbox, that's bold." Karen's lip curled. "So is ugliness, expect fines." And then came the dagger. She held her phone high. "I've already alerted the community forum. People need to know a certain homeowner is attracting incidents." Our phones pinged almost instantly. Karen's post already live, public safety alert. "Some residents encourage chaos with non-compliant structures. Please report." Attached, a photo of my cratered fence, carefully cropped to exclude the Mustang-shaped cause. Sam smirked, fingers flying across her keyboard. "Facts, Cole, facts don't lie." She uploaded the crash footage straight from our door cam, clear as day. Then added a poll. Did the fence jump? Options, no and also no. Within minutes, the votes stacked. 98% against Karen's version. Mike chimed in with aggressive fence update. Remains domesticated. Karen's reply was a storm of exclamation points. Sam pinned the police report number right beneath it, neat as a signature. Karen had lost the forum, but she wasn't playing for likes. She was playing for control. That Thursday night, the HOA gathered in the beige box we called a clubhouse. Stale coffee, folding chairs, and 20 homeowners who would rather be anywhere else. Karen sat at the head table, flanked by her loyal yes-men. Perfect posture, perfect hair, and that smile, the one that said she was about to destroy someone with paperwork. She breezed through budgets and landscaping updates, then locked her gaze on me. "Finally," she said, her voice ringing with false authority, "we must address a serious issue of property neglect. Mr. Cole Maddox of 112 Oak Street has allowed his property to fall into disrepair, creating a hazard for the entire community." Whispers rippled, eyes turned, and Karen's smile widened. "This board has issued fines totaling $1,750 with immediate remediation required. Mr. Maddox, do you have anything to say before we vote?" This was her moment, the ambush, the public shamming. She expected me to crack, to lose my temper. But I didn't. I stood slowly, manila folder in hand. "I do, Karen," I said calmly. "Thank you for the opportunity to speak." I opened the folder and laid the first paper on the table. "Regarding the unsightly fence, here is the official police report, documenting the accident in which your son drove through it at 5 in the morning, under the influence of nitrous oxide." Her smile faltered. "Second," I continued, sliding another paper forward. "The repair contract. Work begins as soon as your insurance company, currently processing the claim, approves payment. Since it was your son's accident, they'll be footing the bill." A third paper, and the inspection report, 3 years ago, signed by the city, approving the fence as compliant. Finally, I dropped the trump card. "And here, your signature, Karen, the HOA's original approval for that fence." The silence was deafening. Her face went from smug to pale to blotchy red. "This isn't about screws or fences," I said, turning to the room. "This is retaliation. Mrs. Dawson is weaponizing this HOA to punish me because her son was arrested on my property. That's the real hazard here, Not my fence, but a president who believes the rules apply to everyone except her own family. The room shifted, heads nodded, a board member cleared his throat. Karen, is this true? Her hands trembled on the gavel. Out of order, she snapped, her voice cracking. But the spell was broken. From the back, Mike muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Guess the fence didn't jump after all." Snickers rippled. Karen slammed the gavel, but it only sounded like desperation. Her authority had cracked. I sat back down, calm, collected. The war wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time, Karen Dawson wasn't untouchable. And that made her dangerous. The gavel cracked like a gunshot, but no one flinched. Not anymore. Karen Dawson's power was bleeding out right there in the clubhouse, dripping onto the beige carpet with every word she tried to spit. She barked about mailbox colors, tried to pivot back to landscaping, but no one was listening. Her board allies stared down at their agendas like the ink might rescue them. And the rest of the neighbors? They were leaning forward, eyes wide, as if they were finally seeing the queen of this little HOA empire for who she really was. For the first time, Karen Dawson looked small. But I knew better. A cornered predator doesn't surrender, it lashes out. That night after Sam and I got home, she pulled up the door cam footage again. The Mustang, the curve, the blur. Her fingers traced the arc of the skid marks on the screen. "He wasn't joyriding," she murmured. "He was racing. You don't take a corner like that unless you're chasing someone." I frowned. Racing, at 5 in the morning. She nodded. And that burner phone, Cole, what if it's not just for hiding from his mom? What if it's for coordinating? The thought hit me like ice. A crew, a network, street races right here, weaving through the same streets where kids rode bikes and neighbors walked dogs. This wasn't an accident, it was inevitable. We needed proof, more than our cameras, more than the word of a neighbor with hedge clippers. We needed eyes beyond our fence line. Sam dove into her laptop, scrolling through neighborhood forums. Within an hour, she had found Marcus, the Amazon delivery driver who ran our street. His van had dash cams, 360 degrees, recording everything. If Brad had been racing, Marcus's route might have caught it. We offered him $100 to check his footage. Polite, careful, no mention of Karen or Brad, just trying to piece together a crash. By afternoon, Marcus sat across from us at a coffee shop, laptop open. "You're not gonna like this," he muttered. And then I saw it. The silver Mustang, a black Honda, a blue Subaru, all idling side by side in the clubhouse lot at 10 p.m. Kids milling around, phones glowing, engines revving like caged animals. Marcus clicked forward. The next pass, engines screaming, headlights blurring past his van. A street race, right through our quiet neighborhood. My jaw tightened. Sam grabbed the file, her knuckles white. It wasn't just Brad. He wasn't a lone idiot. He was part of something bigger. And worse, those cars weren't strangers. They belonged to kids who lived here. The same ones Karen smiled at during block parties. The same ones who waved from their driveways. The dash cam gave us evidence, but it also gave us a target. "The clubhouse," Sam whispered, eyes narrowing. "The pings from that burner phone, they were using the clubhouse, at night." My stomach turned. The same HOA clubhouse where Karen preached about mailbox colors and lawn lengths was doubling as a hideout for street racers. And only one person had the keys to every door. Karen Dawson. It all clicked into place. Her obsession with burying the crash, her fury when the police showed up, her desperate attempt to pin the blame on me. She wasn't just covering for her son. She was enabling him, protecting the whole operation. That night, Sam and I sat at the kitchen table, plans sprawled across notebooks and screens. "We need eyes on the clubhouse," I said. Sam's fingers were already flying across her keyboard. "High-resolution drone, night vision, thermal imaging. I can have one delivered tomorrow." I smiled, grim and tired. I love living in the future. The next evening, a sleek black drone hummed over our backyard. Silent, invisible against the night sky. Sam manned the feed, her eyes glowing in the screen's reflection. "Operation Night Owl," I whispered, trying to cut the tension. The drone hovered high above the clubhouse lot. At first, nothing, empty asphalt, silent shadows. Maybe we're wrong, Sam said softly. Maybe this was a one-time thing. But at 12:45 a.m., headlights pierced the dark. A black Honda rolled in. Then the Subaru. Then two more cars, engines glowing hot on the thermal feed. One by one, they filed into the clubhouse. Not forced entry, not luck, a key. Sam's voice was barely a breath. They have a key. Cole, she gave them a key. On the feed, Brad's heat signature lit up among the others. He was in the middle of it all, confident, cocky, untouchable. We recorded everything. Plates, faces, keys turning in doors that should have been locked. This wasn't rumor anymore. This wasn't gossip. This was proof. Proof that Karen Dawson wasn't just a tyrant with a stack of HOA notices. She was the guardian of a secret, reckless empire that threatened the safety of everyone in this neighborhood. And with the drone hovering like a silent witness above her kingdom, I realized the truth. The fence crash wasn't the end. It was the spark. The fire had only just begun. The drone footage burned on the screen like a secret too dangerous to hold. Cars pulling in one by one. Engines glowing white-hot in thermal. Kids slipping through a side door like it was their own garage. Brad Dawson in the center, grinning like a king in exile. And the key, always the key. Sam sat back, her face pale in the glow of the monitor. She gave it to them, she whispered. Karen handed them the master key. She's not just covering, she's enabling. I leaned closer to the screen, jaw tight. She's building them a sanctuary. We saved every second of footage. Night vision, thermal, zoomed plates, clear faces, a perfect chain of evidence. Proof that Karen's HOA wasn't about community, wasn't about order. It was a cover. But evidence on a hard drive wasn't enough. Not against someone like Karen Dawson. She would deny, deflect, invent new lies faster than we could expose the old ones. No, to stop her, we needed more than proof. We needed a trap. The idea struck like a lightning bolt. They're working on their cars there, I said slowly. They're tuning, swapping parts. That means they need supplies. Sam caught on instantly. So we become the supplier. A sly grin spread across her face. A fake profile, a too-good-to-be-true deal, we bait the hook. The next 24 hours were a blur of Sam's magic. She built the persona of Drift King 77, a shadowy online seller of rare performance parts. A profile picture of a turbocharger, a bio dripping with credibility, parting out a JDM project. Serious buyers only. She researched their cars, the Civic, the Subaru, the Mustang, found the rare parts they'd crave, and then she listed them just low enough to make desperate kids bite. Then we waited. 2 days, nothing. Only lowball offers from people who weren't our targets. Maybe they're not looking right now, I muttered, doubt gnawing at me. Sam didn't flinch. Patience, the right fish always bites. And then on the third night, the message came. Username, Subby02, short, impatient, written in sloppy text speak. Yo, you still got the injectors? Cash ready. Sam's fingers flew across the keys, slipping into the persona like a second skin. Yeah, man, still got 'em. Lots of interest, though. Urgency, classic sales pressure. How much you want? I can meet tonight. She dangled the bait, listed for 500. Tonight only 400 cash. Hook, line, sinker. Within minutes the deal was set. A public place well lit, wide open. The Home Depot lot off Route 9, 10 o'clock sharp. But this wasn't about showing up. It was about calling in the cavalry. We couldn't storm into a parking lot sting like vigilantes. We weren't cops. We needed law enforcement, but the right kind. Someone who wouldn't laugh us out of the building. I found the number for the county's traffic division. No dispatcher runaround, no general tip line. Straight to Detective Miller, the officer in charge of street racing enforcement. I laid out everything. Calm, precise. From the crash and nitrous to the dash cam footage, the drone surveillance, the burner phone, the bait deal. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Then Miller's voice, low and measured. Mr. Maddox, he said, You've just built me a case my department has been chasing for months. These kids are ghosts. They move, they vanish, but you've pinned them down." He paused and I could hear him typing. "Do not go to that meeting. Do not engage. My team will be there by 9:30. Unmarked units. Surveillance in place. When your buyer shows up, we'll be ready." Sam had already uploaded every file to a secure folder. "Link sent," she told him coolly. Miller's voice softened just a hair. "You two are something else. Now sit tight. We'll handle the rest." We hung up. The adrenaline left us buzzing, half sick, half electrified. We sat in the dark that night, every sound in the house amplified by nerves. The hum of the fridge, the creak of floorboards, my phone on the table between us, black and silent, holding all the possibilities of what might come next. Sam reached across, her fingers brushing mine. "We're not just fighting for a fence anymore, Cole. We're fighting for the whole neighborhood." I squeezed her hand. She was right. And somewhere out there, Karen Dawson was asleep in her bed, completely unaware that the walls of her empire were about to come crashing down. The night of the sting stretched on like forever. We sat in the living room with the lights off, pretending to watch a movie, but neither of us heard a single word from the screen. Every tick of the clock was a hammer in my chest. At 10:15 p.m., the phone buzzed. A text from Detective Miller. "Blue Subaru on scene. We're watching. Sit tight." Sam's grip tightened on my arm. Another 20 minutes. Honda arrived. Silver Mustang joined. Same Mustang, different plate. Group forming around Subaru. My pulse quickened. Different plate. They weren't just reckless kids. They were organized, swapping tags like jerseys before a game. Then the final message. Moving in 5 minutes. We looked at each other in the glow of the phone. Weeks of tension, fear, planning, all leading here. I whispered it out loud as if saying it could make it real. "This is it." At 10:45, my phone lit up again. Miller's name. I put it on speaker. Maddox, his voice was firm, steady, tinged with satisfaction. "It's done. Everyone's in custody." Sam let out a shaky breath. My shoulders sagged for the first time in weeks. "What happened?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "Your bait worked perfectly," Miller said. "The 3 cars showed up, kids waiting around for their seller. They got restless. That's when we moved. 2 unmarked vans boxed the exits. They were stunned, looked like deer in headlights. Then panic. They bolted on foot." I could picture it as he spoke. Engines cooling, sneakers slapping against asphalt, officers moving like shadows. "Did they run far?" I asked. Miller chuckled grimly. "Not far, most were down in 20 feet. The Honda driver gave us a chase through the garden section, hid in a rack of tiki torches. Didn't work. They're not sprinters. They're kids who only know how to push a gas pedal." Sam covered her mouth, eyes wide. "And Brad?" I asked, holding my breath. Miller's tone hardened. "Oh, he was there. First one we identified. Tried to claim he was just buying a video game. Didn't run, though. Just stood there, stunned. Like the world had betrayed him." I closed my eyes, the weight of it crashing down. Brad Dawson caught again. But this time, no Karen storming into the scene in her silk robe. No mother to rewrite reality. Just cold handcuffs and silence. "What now?" I asked. "The cars are impounded," Miller said. "We'll run VINs, check plates, comb through everything. The kids will face conspiracy charges for organized racing. Some might face reckless endangerment, maybe more. We'll know after we dig into the cars." Sam's voice broke in, steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You've got them, detective. Really got them." "Thanks to you," Miller replied, his voice softened. "You did your community a service tonight. Sleep easy. We'll keep you updated." When the call ended, silence filled the room. A heavy, surreal silence that buzzed louder than noise. We'd done it. The crew was broken, the clubhouse exposed, Karen's kingdom collapsing piece by piece. And yet unease coiled in my gut. Because I knew Karen Dawson. This wasn't just her son, this was her pride, her image, her crown, and people like Karen don't just accept defeat. They twist, they claw, they burn everything down before they surrender. Sam must have seen it in my eyes. She squeezed my hand. "We won, Cole. Don't let her steal that from you." I nodded, but the knot inside me stayed. The neighborhood was quiet that night, quieter than it had been in months. No engines roaring down our streets, no shadows slipping into the clubhouse, just silence. But even in that calm, one thought echoed louder than all the rest. We hadn't seen the last of Karen Dawson. The sting was a victory, but the war was still coming. The sting had rattled the neighborhood, but the silence that followed felt unnatural, too still, too staged, like the calm before a storm you can't see but know is coming. The next morning, Detective Miller's number flashed across my phone. His voice was sharp, clipped, all business. "Mr. Maddox, we've uncovered something bigger. During the impound search, we found stolen plates. The Subaru was running tags from a minivan in another state. The Honda's plate belonged to a stolen truck. This wasn't just racing. This was organized." I swallowed hard. How organized? He didn't hesitate. "We found a key, commercial, tagged 317. Led us to a storage unit rented 2 months ago under a fake name. We got a warrant." My stomach tightened as he paused. Then his tone shifted, almost disbelieving. "You're not going to believe this. The unit's a workshop. High-end tools likely stolen. Stacks of car stereos, serial numbers scratched off, plates, dozens of them, and a ledger." I gripped the phone tighter. "Ledger?" "Yeah," he said, voice low. "Every race, dates, bets, winnings, even parts they boosted. And here's the kicker, Brad Dawson's handwriting is all over it. He wasn't just along for the ride, he was the bookkeeper." I froze, the words hitting like a hammer. Brad, the golden boy, the excuse Karen used for every HOA crusade, wasn't just reckless. He was the record keeper of a criminal ring. Miller exhaled into the receiver. "This elevates the charges. We're talking felony counts. Possession of stolen property, grand larceny, conspiracy. The DA's office is taking this very seriously." When the call ended, I sat in silence. Sam stared at me, waiting. I finally managed to say it out loud. "It's over for him, for both of them." And it was, because within days the truth spread like wildfire. Neighbors whispered in driveways. The HOA board called an emergency session. This time, Karen didn't get to stand at the head table with her cruel smile and her gavel. She sat in the crowd, pale and silent, while her empire crumbled. George, the quiet accountant, stood at the front. "By unanimous vote," he announced, "Karen Dawson is removed as president, effective immediately." Her cronies resigned on the spot. George promised an audit, new locks on every property, and term limits for board members. The neighbors applauded. For the first time, our community felt like it belonged to us again. Karen sat frozen, lips tight, eyes blazing with humiliation. Her kingdom gone in a single meeting. But my satisfaction was tempered by something heavier. Because I knew her story wasn't just HOA fines and petty power. It was deeper, darker. She had been willing to put her entire neighborhood at risk to shield her son from the truth. And now the truth was out for the whole world to see. Weeks passed and the DA's office called us in. Sam had compiled everything, the crash footage, dash cam, drone, sting messages. The prosecutor, Miss Davies, flipped through our binder like she'd just been handed gold. "I've been doing this for a decade," she said, "and I've never seen a case wrapped this tight before trial." She smiled at Sam. "Meticulous, organized, you two didn't just witness, you built the backbone of the investigation." Brad and his crew were charged as adults. Their parents hired high-priced lawyers, ready to spin them as misunderstood kids who loved cars too much. And at the center of it all, I knew, would be Karen Dawson. She would testify. She would cry. She would try to drag her son back into the illusion of innocence. But illusions shatter under light. Because now it wasn't just about a crash or nitrous or HOA fines. It was about stolen property, stashed goods, a ledger written in her son's own hand. The Dawson name, once a weapon Karen wielded to silence neighbors, had become evidence. Exhibit A. And as Sam and I walked out of the DA's office that day, the courthouse looming in the distance, I felt the weight shift. We weren't just homeowners fighting an HOA president anymore. We were witnesses to the collapse of a dynasty built on lies. And Karen Dawson's final act, the one where she tried to rewrite reality under oath, was coming fast. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old air, the kind that carries every secret ever whispered inside it. Rows of benches creaked as neighbors filed in, their curiosity stronger than their morning routines. Everyone wanted to see the fall of Karen Dawson, the woman who had ruled our community like a queen with a stack of fines for a crown. Brad sat at the defense table, pale and restless, his hands cuffed beneath the surface. His eyes darted to the gallery, scanning for sympathy, but all he found were stares of disbelief. Parents he grew up around, teachers who once called him bright. Now they looked at him like a stranger. And beside him, Karen, her silk robe replaced with a sharp navy blazer, hair perfectly sculpted, face painted in resilience. She whispered in her son's ear, squeezing his shoulder, as if sheer willpower could undo the evidence stacked against him. The prosecutor, Miss Davies, opened with quiet fire. She walked the jury through the footage, Marcus's dash cam, our drone, the sting in the Home Depot lot. Every clip, every still frame was another nail in the coffin. And then came the ledger, the neat handwriting, the columns of dates and bets, Brad's initials scribbled across the margins. The jury leaned forward, Karen leaned back. When it was her turn on the stand, the tension was thick enough to choke on. She swore in, voice steady, chin raised. For a moment, she looked like the Karen Dawson I'd always known, the woman who had terrified neighbors with violation slips and wielded power like a weapon. Her lawyer began with softball questions. Community service, dedication to safety. Her image polished to perfection, and for a flicker of a second I saw heads nod. Maybe, just maybe, she could still spin the room. But then Miss Davies stepped up, and the illusion cracked. "Mrs. Dawson," she began, "do you recognize this key?" Karen stiffened. On the screen, a photo of the clubhouse master key filled the courtroom. Her lawyer objected, overruled. Karen's voice faltered. "It looks similar." Davies didn't blink. "Similar to the one your son used to open the clubhouse in the early hours of May 3rd. Karen's eyes darted, hunting for escape. I can't be sure." Davies' tone sharpened. "You can't be sure, yet you've been HOA president for 6 years. Every key is signed out under your name. Do you deny authorizing access?" Karen's silence was louder than words. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Davies pressed on, each question a hammer. Why the clubhouse lights were disabled on nights of the races. Why no HOA logs showed maintenance, despite the damage. Why her son had the authority to use the space at all. And finally, why her own phone records placed her outside the clubhouse at 12:42 a.m., just minutes before the racers pulled in. Karen cracked, her voice rose, shrill, desperate. "I was protecting him. He's my son. He made mistakes, but he's a good boy." Davies' response was a blade. "You weren't protecting him, Mrs. Dawson. You were protecting yourself. Because the moment this community saw your truth, your power was gone." The courtroom fell into a silence so heavy it rang in my ears. Karen Dawson, once untouchable, was nothing more than a mother who had gambled her entire kingdom on a lie. The verdict came swift. Brad Dawson guilty on multiple felony counts. His crew the same. Karen charged with obstruction, accessory, misuse of HOA funds. When the gavel fell, it wasn't just judgment, it was release. Neighbors walked out into the daylight with their shoulders lighter, their voices freer. For the first time in years, we weren't living under the shadow of Karen's threats. The HOA board rebuilt itself, fair and balanced, led by people who cared about the community instead of control. Sam and I stood at our repaired fence weeks later, fresh cedar glowing in the sun. She leaned against me, her voice soft. "Do you ever think it's strange that all of this started with one crash?" I looked at the boards, solid and straight, no cracks, no splinters. "Strange," I said, "but maybe fitting, because sometimes it takes something breaking to show you what really needs fixing." She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, the air around us felt still, safe. And as the sun dipped behind the roofs of our quiet little street, I realized the truth. Karma had a way of building fences stronger than before. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.